And we're also very fortunate to have with us today our next speaker. I'd like to introduce Director Pauley of the Missouri Department of Conservation, who will be our next speaker, Sara Pauley, and talking about Healthy Soils, the Missouri Partnership. Welcome, Director.
Well, good afternoon, everyone. I'm just heartsick that I missed this morning's presentations because I've already been stopped by several people just to mention how wonderful the conversations have been. And I know I've had a few of our conservation folks here. There's Brian, and Stuart, and who else is in the crowd from the Department of Conservation? Anyone? Oh yeah, we got folks everywhere. All right. So if any tough questions are asked, I'm pointing to these guys. But it is a delight to be with you all this afternoon, and also to see so many partners' faces and friends of conservation. So one might ask why the Missouri Department of Conservation is engaged in a symposium on healthy soils. Well, from my perspective, healthy soils form the basis for all the fish, forest, and wildlife conservation we do as an agency. Healthy soils keep our air and water clean. And in my mind, healthy soils equals healthy nature. In fact, one of our conservation commissioners, and most of you in this room are familiar with the Conservation Commission. They are 4 governor-appointed commissioners of the agency. They're basically my bosses and oversee the agency. And one of them, you guys know who I am now, so I'm going to take this off. One of them recently stated that the soil health movement is perhaps the most important conservation initiative of my career, he said. And I thought for a conservation commissioner to state it that way was pretty impressive and says quite a bit. So for just a little while this afternoon, I want to visit with you about the importance of Missouri's unique and long-standing history of engagement in soils as a foundation of natural resource management, and to reaffirm our commitment to partnerships with you here today. Now, our shared tradition of partnerships will be one of our guiding lights to the future. There's no doubt about that, and I'm sure you've talked about, and why we're all here today is just the value of partnerships. The model, quite honestly, in Missouri is already here, and I call it the Missouri model of natural resource conservation. Oops. I'm not getting, here we go. How's that? Nope. Yes, I got it. Okay, now I know what I'm doing. Missouri, as many in this auditorium know, has a rich history of being an innovative leader in creating and sustaining partnerships for soil and water conservation and for conservation in general. State, federal, and local partnerships have long advanced the sciences of soil mapping and characterization while funding the implementation of soil and water conservation. The 1985 Farm Bill created wonderful opportunities for the USDA to partner with the Department of Conservation and the Department of Natural Resources, the University of Missouri, and the Soil and Water Conservation Districts. These partnerships have greatly reduced soil erosion and improved water quality throughout the state in less than really 30 years. Our commitment of MDC staff stationed in many local soil and water conservation district and USDA offices throughout Missouri provides seamless delivery of programs and stimulates mutual cooperation and program effectiveness. And it's my pleasure to affirm our commitment to these wonderful and successful partnerships as exemplary examples of success, which they are. The latest example of Missouri's innovative thinking and partnering is MU's Soil Health Assessment Center, which is a national leader in the developing of science of soil health. And this kind of creative collaboration must continue to meet the needs of Missourians. And it was wonderful in my role as the director of Missouri Department of Natural Resources to be part of funding that center. Missourians believe in conservation. And I'm very proud, and so many here know this story so well, I'm very proud that Missourians voted 5 times to support the Missouri's Park Soil and Water Sales Tax, the most recent in 2016 with an amazing majority of roughly 80% in favor. And so many in this room were instrumental in this passage yet again. Missouri Department of Conservation's 1/8 of 1 cent sales tax has been instrumental for decades now in conserving Missouri's natural bounty and providing opportunities for people to enjoy and benefit from the outdoors. Partnerships are critical to the success of the department and have been since its founding 80 years ago. We work with partners at many different levels to promote, restore, and improve fish, forest, and wildlife habitats while also enhancing soil health. Staff work with landowners daily, offering both technical assistance and cost share to enhance wildlife habitats, including native species. We partner with NRCS to assist with implementation of Farm Bill programs, including RCPP focus areas designed to enhance diversity of grasslands. Our partnership with MSU at Jernigan Ranch is demonstrating diversity or how conservation practices can be integrated into working cattle ranches. We partner with cattle producers like Amy and Rex Hamilton, investigating the benefits of high diversity plantings of native species for cattle grazing and resulting soil health benefits from these plantings. We also are partnering with MU's Bradford Farm to research wildlife benefits from the use of cover crops and native plantings, just as a few examples. We're especially proud to work with so many partners and dedicated Missourians. And these benefits are enjoyed by everyone, including our private landowners, who, by the way, own over 90% of the land in Missouri. So critical partners for us. Now, we all know in this room that success has not always been the case, but what we do know is that soils preserve a record of past actions, and with right conservation practices, we can restore health to the soil and, equally important, improve water quality. Biologists and soil scientists have known for a long time that soils are a biological system, that soil is the foundation of terrestrial ecology, and its health is essential in successful natural resource conservation. The Healthy Soils movement is so appealing to me, quite honestly, because it makes sense to so many people for so many practical reasons, I think, which we can all agree to those reasons. So let's talk about a few of those. The public interest in nutritious food and clean water, combined with the soil health movement, gives us a unique opportunity in this period of time to inform and build public awareness about the essential nature of soil and water for natural resource conservation. 8 out of 10 Missourians say they worry about drinking water quality and the pollution in Missouri's rivers and streams in a statewide 2013 public opinion survey. 9 out of 10 people attending a 2011 Missouri Water Summit agree that they personally worry about the pollution of rivers, streams, lakes, drinking water supplies, and the loss of fish and wildlife habitats. And in a 2009 Governor Summit on Missouri Outdoors, water quality and the importance of water quality, the #1 natural resource priority. Not surprising to anyone here, I know. So to me, then, the path is wide open for this next chapter of success for Missouri's soil and water conservation partnerships. The next chapter is perhaps healthy soils make for healthy waters. As our speakers, I know, have likely discussed today, soil health is the foundation of biological health and is directly linked to healthy waters and water quantity that sustain wildlife and sustain us. Certain physical features such as the roots, the dark color, the soil structure of a healthy native prairie soil can be seen from this slide. The comparison of the same soil profile on the right, just 200 feet apart in the landscape, but farmed continuously for almost 100 years. It's striking, the difference. What we can't see are the chemical and biological characteristics. The prairie soil is rich in organic matter and soil organisms that drive nutrient availability and nutrient cycling. Healthy soils promote biological and physical soil processes which create pore space, which allow water to infiltrate into and percolate through the soil into streams, wetlands, groundwater. The native prairie soil's biological system is part of the hydrological and ecological web that connects a farm in western Missouri, in this case, with our state's bountiful wetlands, lakes, and streams, and onto our continent's great rivers, and eventually with the Gulf's coastal marshes and spawning beds. As famed ecologist Barry Commoner wrote over 40 years ago, everything is connected to everything else, and everything has to go somewhere. So let's talk about healthy soil as the great connector. All of us have reason to support healthy soils, whether it's growing trees or corn or eastern gamma grass. Our shared vision is to return and restore those beneficial soil functions as much as possible using practices such as cover crops and buffer strips. And I know you've talked about other mechanisms today and methods. Now, the retired publisher of the Columbia Daily Tribune once wrote that Missourians' passion for the outdoors and natural resource conservation resulted in actions that reflected, quote, one thing Missouri does well in state government. Now, I'm not sure it's the only thing, but this Missouri model of citizen-driven support is an amazing model. I mean, what other states can speak to citizen-driven, citizen-led sales taxes for conservation and for soil and water and parks? This passion is reflected, as I mentioned, in this room today. So many of you instrumental in those efforts and in supporting those efforts for many, many years. So we talk about the power of partnerships and of active listening. This is a photo of a breakout of a partners meeting we did at the Department of Conservation just a couple of months ago, in which over 70 partners from agriculture, industry, local government, state government, federal government, conservation groups came together to help us as an agency prioritize our top priorities for the next 3 to 5 years. So in thinking of these partners, I think of the optimism in the soil health movement. It's achievable at low cost, with large benefits, and with few unintended consequences. So you can understand my joy to talk about such a solvable conservation subject amid many conservation issues that are not so solvable today. The healthy soil movement is what the Noble Foundation calls the renaissance of soil science, based on the increased understanding of how soil biota drives agriculture and conservation. And MDC is determined to strengthen our long-standing partnerships and engage new partners in this soil health movement. We believe land health is dependent upon the resiliency and the productivity of the soil. Land health is reflected in the water that moves through and across the land. Healthy lands lead to healthy waters, as our Missouri partnerships have confirmed for many, many decades. The soil health movement promotes the health and welfare of people by improving the health of nature. We always have to have an Aldo Leopold quote in there somewhere, so here's mine. He captured this years ago when he wrote, "The health of the land is the ultimate goal of conservationists." This is part of the foundation of Leopold's land ethic that we all know so well, as described in the Sand County Almanac. It describes a call for moral responsibility for our natural world. We all need to see land as a community to which we belong, and strong relationships between healthy people and healthy land are a part of that. Practices that maintain healthy soils and healthy waters will be essential in this movement. Dedication to science and management, strong communication to our citizens, and commitment to our partnerships will be our guide. People's understanding and appreciation of the outdoors and natural resources will be the keystone of our future here in Missouri and certainly elsewhere. So what do we do to advance soil and water conservation? Well, we work with our USDA and MDNR partners to provide seamless service to landowners in designing wetlands, forestry, planting wildlife-friendly buffer strips, and promoting soil conservation practices. I've already mentioned our involvement in USDA and MDNR soil and water conservation practices and with MU and researching outcomes of those practices which benefit landowners and wildlife. Everything is indeed connected to everything else. An example is our partnership with over 40 organizations to restore monarch butterfly habitat in 16 states, and Missouri is central to that initiative. What else will we do to support Missouri's land ethic? Well, we've recently updated our strategic plan, as I mentioned. We've been working on that over a year now and have just wrapped that up. It'll be posted to our website soon, but we went around the state, 8 open houses, engaging the public on what they believe to be our priorities, our partners meeting, as I mentioned, engaging our commission and others. So we're very excited about the direction that this strategic plan provides. So this new plan will reflect our priorities: protecting nature, our fish, forest, and wildlife and their habitats, engaging people, and strengthening the department's ability to deliver for our citizens. So how do we stay relevant for new generations? This is a big one for us as an agency. How do we become more productive and efficient in utilization and conserving natural resources while still having outdoor places for people to enjoy and, of course, for wildlife? How do we address an ever-increasing worldwide demand on Missouri's natural resources without overextending our staff and financial resources? These are among the issues we spend a lot of time thinking about and planning for. The department is dedicated to continuous improvement, which includes evolving relationships with traditional partners and with new partners. So where are we aiming? Well, we are aiming to continue to be as creative and innovative a leader in conservation as we can be, which means, in part, we'll be prioritizing. We'll focus our efforts on what we call comprehensive conservation strategies, which are priority landscapes and habitats where we'll focus and prioritize our efforts. And these priority areas, which we have worked on in conjunction with our partners, have been determined based upon good science and partnerships and effective management to benefit both nature and people. We believe all Missourians, no matter where they live, will benefit when connected with nature and with the outdoors. So not only is our world changing, but the expectations of the people of the world are changing too. No doubt about that. For the first time ever, the majority of our population will be urban and not rural. So how do people cut off from the outdoors appreciate where their food and their drinking water come from? We strive for ways to make this connection for them. One example, MDC is a partner with the St. Louis Green City Project, which is in the process of converting about 1,000 abandoned properties in the urban core back into functioning green spaces. In some cases, they'll be for pollinator habitat. In other cases, they'll be urban gardens. But imagine not only an increase to property value, but the social benefits of a former abandoned lot turning into these tremendous green spaces that'll affect physical and emotional health and mental health as well. So we're very excited about this. This is an incredible opportunity of how powerful partnerships can be to conservation and to local communities. It's also a great opportunity to make that connection of soil health to our urban residents, which again, now in the majority in this state. So we've got to figure out ways to make it real, to make those messages real, to tell our story of soil health in the urban areas. Our Missouri partnership must be preparing now As the healthy soil movement suggests we are, the demand for food and fiber and water will grow faster in the next 30 years than in all history combined. Missouri's natural resources will be drawn upon like never before to support that worldwide demand. So I'll use a Missouri agroforestry example to illustrate how world demand is affecting Missouri resources. Pecan cultivation evolved from people observing nature and finding ways to use these natural processes, in this case for highly nutritious pecans. This kind of cultural and economic utilization worked when demand and economic markets were personal, local, or regional. Demand and markets for natural resources, now we know, are worldwide. The entire world is the market now for our natural resources, buying every pecan the United States can produce. So pecan growers are using science and experience to respond to this worldwide demand. But the land and water resources we can devote to growing pecans are limited. So how do we prepare for this worldwide demand, not just for pecans, but for all our Missouri natural resources? Conservation, again, is key for protecting today's agroforestry economy and tomorrow's opportunities. Together with our partners, we are innovating, we're identifying, developing, and promoting programs such as pollinator conservation by using plants that provide necessary habitat and improve soil and water. We promote soil and water conservation practices that support a diversity of wildlife. We seek outcomes that not only promote the natural world, but people's enjoyment and appreciation of the outdoors. We want to connect people with the natural world and, critically importantly, build the awareness in the rural areas and the urban areas, build awareness of how their lives depend upon healthy soils and healthy waters. And we can only do this with our partners, such as so many of you here today. Together, we educate and empower people to share wisdom and the love of nature, because in the end, it's in all of our natures to do so. Thank you. So I think there's a few minutes. Are we doing, I'm looking around for somebody to tell me if we do a little Q&A, and I guess I'm on my own, so we're just going to do a Q&A. We have a few minutes. Okay, very good. Very good.
If there's any questions for Director Pauley, we have a few minutes.
Yes, sir.
It's been shown. Is it on? It's been shown that the chemicals used in killing unwanted grasses, so you can plant proper grasses in the Department of Conservation, that causes further damage to the ecosystem in the soil. Why does the Missouri Department of Conservation continue to use the chemicals as a way to achieve your goals?
There's a good question right off the bat. So we're constantly looking at best practices and ways to achieve our conservation goals, and sometimes that does require the use of herbicides. So we're very conscientious and very conservative in how we apply them, but at this point in time, in order to achieve those further conservation goals, the use of herbicides is in our toolbox. But we are cautious about where we apply, how close to a water body, and ensure that we follow not only the requirements of an herbicide, but additional best practices as defined. But quite honestly, that's something that we'll probably continue to wrestle with as we move forward. No doubt about it. Thank you. Yes?
Is there any way Missouri Department of Conservation or Department of Natural Resources, anybody, can exert any influence on these utility companies? Oh, I'm sorry, I forgot, I don't have that big of a... Yeah. These utility companies and even the road districts that are just blindly going through and spraying everything in sight Their chemicals drift. They've killed, the lines are across the road, and it's drifted and killed stuff on my property, and there's practically no recourse.
Right.
Yes, I'm on the no spray
Yes.
list, but they subcontract this out, and they keep doing it, and then the road districts come along, and they rip the trees off, and they mow into the bank. We've got, I don't know how many fence lines in our neighborhood that are leaning about to fall because they have cut into the ditches, cut into the banks with their mowers. They do so much damage. And for a state that is so concerned about our conservation practices.
Mervyn Wallace is over here saying, right on, right on. How's she going to answer that one? So, and I'm looking at Brent back there too. So I will tell you that we have started a conversation with MoDOT, probably in the last year. And we've identified a couple of pilot areas, both in, hi Kurt, Kurt's like, have you really? Brent, if you want to add to this, you know, feel free to do that. But we've identified in the Ozark region and in the Kansas City region as 2 pilot areas where we would begin to work with MoDOT on planting natives. And I mean, of course, they list all of their concerns about liability, about view shed, and things that are on there, and rightly so, on their list. And so we have a team that's been working with MoDOT at that regional level to say, let's try some pilot areas. And, you know, of course, Mervyn Wallace over here is little Johnny Appleseed and has been planting natives along roadways for as long as you've been alive, probably. 25 years, okay. A little longer, a little less. But there are great opportunities with MoDOT, and I think we've got to kind of prove to them that we can be judicious and cognizant of their values and public safety, and of course things that we would value too, but at the same time save money, money on certainly on mowing and other maintenance needs. And so that is a great opportunity, and those conversations have begun. They're not going as fast as I know many people would like. Utilities, great opportunity there as well, but we've been working with Associated Electric on using rights-of-way to plant pollinator habitat. And Brent, I'm going to put you on the spot. Do you want to share any more about that?
I can. I don't have a microphone.
Brent's like, oh boy. We can hear you. We can hear you. Oh, she got it, yep.
So I'm Brent Vandeluke. I'm the department's agricultural liaison, and I serve the department on our state monarch and pollinator team, as does Merv. I saw Pete Millier in here earlier, several of us. But the right-of-way companies and Ameren, Associated Electric are both partners. MoDOT's a partner. So we're all sitting down at the table talking how to benefit pollinators, eliminate invasives in some of these rights of ways, and how to work with landowners better. And they got a real complicated issue there because they stretch all the way across the state, and they're dealing with landowners, different landowners every quarter mile, and everybody's got an opinion. And but they're at the table and they're listening. They're doing some good things. I think we're heading in the right direction.
And to that, the Monarch Collaborative, Missouri Monarch Collaborative, we are the first state in the nation to actually form a collaborative of this type with state agencies, local governments, federal agencies, ag partners, utilities, to come together to establish, some of these partnerships. I think in the Monarch, Midwest Monarch Plan, the goal would be 1.3 to 1.6 billion stems of milkweed in a 20-year period of time. And Missouri is both in that North Core zone and the South Core zone, so we are right in the heart of it. And so the one to put a collaborative together, have an executive director who's really focused on bringing all these partners together. So the conversation is starting.
Yeah, and other states are looking at what we're doing in Missouri. I've been working with several other states to work on their plans too. So I think we're heading in the right direction with the right-of-ways.
I think we have a follow-up here and then one more question, and I think we'll wrap it up.
I was going to ask you, wow, this is loud. Missouri has a lot of very diverse ecosystems, a lot of different soil types, and 2 major rivers that leaching can be a problem with. I guess my question was for you, how as the director do you make sure that each region is receiving the kind of help they need for their soil health that might benefit their region? just because there's so many different things that go on in Missouri. There's so many different ecosystems that need addressed. How do you make sure that each region is getting exactly what they need?
Well, that's an excellent question, and especially I'm headed back to make some budget decisions for the next fiscal year. So you're always trying to determine, and part of the reason we did this strategic plan is with limited resources, how do we know where we're going to get the biggest bang for the buck on the resource side? And so it might not necessarily be equitably distributed by region. Instead, what you mentioned are ecosystems. And so what we as an agency have been working on for a number of years is this comprehensive conservation strategy I mentioned, where we look internally. We look at forestry priorities and grassland priorities, habitat priorities, wildlife priorities, watershed priorities, and on the aquatic side. And then we go to our partners, key partners, and we say, where are your priorities? And we've layered all of these priorities on map of Missouri based upon ecosystems, and we've layered all of those priorities on top of each other. And we said, okay, for limited resources, we know we'll get the biggest bang for the buck in these areas, in these sorts of habitats. And then we've even refined it further to say, okay, in this next 3 to 5 year window, we're going to focus on what we call priority geographies, and we're going to hone down even at a greater level there. And in those priority geographies, we look at our cost share practices, and we incentivize even more certain practices for landowners. We talked about over 90% being in private land, so it can't just be a public land conversation. So this concept of prioritizing our landscapes based upon priorities, and then how do you know if you're moving the needle? So we've also been working with a Fish and Wildlife Service and a research center out of Atlanta to create a health indices or health index to determine if we know that we're moving the needle. So it really is about prioritization, and that's where we're headed with comprehensive conservation strategies.
We have time for just maybe 1 or 2 more questions. Quick question, and we'll finish up with Dr. Honey.
Yeah, Sarah, has there been any talk or concern? I noticed that it seems like it's ramping up the hedgerows. You get in cropping land, I mean, they're just wiping them out. Everywhere you drive in cropping area, they're just taking out these huge hedgerows. It's been there for 70 years. And you showed that slide up there at the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going back that. I mean, people have a short memory, but it just concerns me to see all this habitat when, you know, they're put there for a reason. They were planted there, and now we're just taking them out. And is there any incentive to keep those? I mean, can we reverse that direction somehow?
Well, what I'm going to ask is maybe at a break that Brent could share of our Costshare docket that the Department of Conservation offers, what practices might meet that need. And so I don't have in my head all those Costshare practices. I don't put Colleen Meredith on the spot too, Director of the Soil and Water Program at DNR. I bet she will have a good idea on the soil and water side of Costshare practices that may go towards that. Is that fair enough? Yeah, Brent's going to stand up and answer it right now.
One thing I will say
Yeah.
is hedgerows are complicated because
Yeah.
there's different owners on both sides of the fence.
That's right.
Quick question. I was just going to say hedgerows get particularly complicated in most situations because usually there's a different owner on both sides of the fence, and if they don't agree, then you're kind of stuck. But we don't have a good program to address that right now. It's been talked about before, but it's a tough one, especially when it's a boundary line issue. Yeah. If it's not a boundary line issue, there's things we can do.
Okay, thank you, Brent. We're going to have this the final question or comment from Dr. Wayne Hennicutt, and then move on to our next speaker.
Hi, Sarah. It's very nice meeting you earlier. In
nice to meet you,
the
too.
interest of full disclosure, you realize that I'm not a Missouri citizen, and so you don't have to answer my
But
question.
you wish you lived here, didn't you?
Absolutely, yeah. The more time I spend here, and I do have family ties here. But you talked about your strategic planning effort and how it's been an ongoing effort, and I imagine you're quite excited about some of it. And perhaps there are some things you can't talk about yet, but since it hasn't been released yet, but I wanted to see if there are any particular 1 or 2 things that you're most excited about with your strategic plan that you can talk about today.
What I will tell you is that it is soon to be posted to our website, and we're trying to get it up, I think, by that 1st or 2nd week of February, so it will be posted to our website so that everybody can see what those, 4 strategic goals, then 14 outcomes, and we get down into just strategies and objectives. I think there's a couple of things, and one's more of an internal thing for me, and 80 years of an organization that's kind of used to its silos, and so, forestry division, very kind of forestry driven as it should be, fisheries, et cetera. This strategic plan just kind of puts the organization silos out in the window and says, what are the most important conservation outcomes that we want to achieve? And so now internally, we have interdivisional teams, outcome champions for each of these 14 outcomes. And so all the divisions are represented somewhere in these outcomes. But these outcome champions are responsible for measuring how are we doing in this area and reporting back to me as administration, to our commission, to the public on a quarterly basis to say, how are we moving the needle? So it's that instead of focusing, kind of more down here on the silos, we're really focused on those most important things for the Department of Conservation, and then ensuring we've got measures in place to determine, are we moving the needle, and if not, what are those barriers? How do we get them out of the way? So that, to me, that's pretty exciting, very public-facing.
Thank you very much. Thank you for the questions, and thank you for Director Pauley for your presentation.